Hey there, we've got 9-6 fetal circulation. Nice small one for today. So let's get started. Here we go. In the little embryo, sorry, squeaky chair again. Once the neural tube is starting to form on the bottom side, we've got the gut is beginning to form. And at the same time, some mesodermal cells are kind of coming together and forming some tubes. Those tubes are going to end up being some what just look like arteries and veins to begin with. And so just about 20 days post-fertilization, what we have are two tubes that carry blood, as you can see in this particular direction. But what's kind of cool is that they stick together. And when they stick together, they lose the connection in between and just become one big tube with two inlets and two outlets. And then from there, it's going to do this little twisty action. And a little twisty action is what gives us all the different parts of our heart. So the little twisty rotation of the heart gives us our atria and our ventricles. And then they start to specialize and branch out, as you can see right here. It only starts out with one branch, but then eventually splits into two and so on. And that's where we get all the little branches from the pulmonary arteries and the aorta and so on. So all this in just a couple of days, because at about 3 weeks, is where we get these two blood vessels, so about 20-21 days. And then just 7 days later, it's already pretty much a fully formed heart. So 4 weeks, 1 month after fertilization, so you're only 2 weeks pregnant, your little baby's already pumping blood, and that's pretty darn cool. So at 3 weeks, it's when it starts to form into the S shape, and then not too long after, the cells inside start to contract, and you've got yourself a nice little beating heart. There are lots of modifications that go for the circulatory system of a fetus because they don't breathe in oxygen through their lungs like we do. They get it from the umbilical cord. Same thing, the CO2 doesn't come out from their lungs. It goes through the umbilical cord. So they need some modifications to deal with the fact that your blood doesn't need to go to your lungs. So first of all, let's look at the vessels themselves. So we have umbilical veins and umbilical arteries. Umbilical veins excuse me, carry oxygenated blood from mom to baby. So veins we know go away from the heart, but they're going to the baby. So this is in reference to mom. It's a vein because it's going away from mom's heart, but it goes into the baby and then goes to the baby's heart. So this is in reference to mom. And the umbilical arteries, same thing. I just messed that up, didn't I? Never mind. I lied. Let's try that again. Away is artery. I know that. I'm tired. So let me try that again. Vein is in reference to baby because veins go to the heart. So an umbilical vein, baby's umbilical vein, carries blood from the mom, away from mom, but to the heart of the baby. And then the umbilical arteries, in reference to the baby, go away from the heart and then eventually go back into the umbilical cord, back to the placenta, back towards mom. Okay? So veins, arteries are in reference to the baby themselves. Okay, now that we got that settled, now let's take a look at the modifications. So the first modification is this thing called the Ductus Venosus. The Ductus Venosus is a shunt that bypasses the liver and dumps into the, what do you think that stands for? Inferior vena cava. So the blood comes, here's baby. That's a baby potato. Here's a placenta. So blood, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with me. So the blood, fresh, high oxygen blood is coming from the placenta, going into baby's belly button, and then usually blood goes to the liver, but it goes past the liver and goes directly into the inferior vena cava on its way to the heart. What this does is it mixes fresh blood with, coming from the baby, low oxygen blood, which is coming from the arms and legs, and then going and meeting up with the inferior vena cava. So we get this mixing of fresh and unfresh blood. So it's kind of like, medium oxygen level. So that goes in. Now, there is some blood that just naturally does go onto the liver, so that way the liver cells have food and nutrition and can continue to grow. But for the most part, the liver's job, which is to detoxify, is completely done by the placenta alone. So the liver has no job yet. So he just gets blood so he can continue to grow. So we have the ductus venosus, which sends blood not to the liver, but directly to the inferior vena cava. Okay, the second one that we have, the second modification, is the foramen ovale. You guys remember that when we did the heart. So the heart, we've got the right ventricle, left ventricle, right atrium, left atrium. So what happens is when the blood's coming from the inferior vena cava, it goes to the right atrium, from the superior as well. And then normally it would go right ventricle to lungs, and then left atrium, left ventricle to go pick up the oxygen. But the oxygen is coming with the other blood from the inferior vena cava. So it doesn't need to go to the lungs. So it completely bypasses the ventricles in the lung by going straight to the left atrium. By going into the left atrium, now it's going to go to the left ventricle and then out to the rest of the body. So that oxygen that came from mom is just going to go straight through and outside of baby's heart. And then if you remember, once the baby's born and this closes, then it becomes the fossa ovalis. Okay, the third modification that the baby has is called the Ductus Arteriosus. And so, okay, here's the top of the heart. So we have the pulmonary trunk, goes like this, right? And then we also have the aorta. How am I going to draw this? Okay, now it looks like a stormtrooper. Use your imaginations. So here's the aorta right here. This is the pulmonary artery. So what happens is there is a connection between the two. That's the ductus arteriosus. And it connects the pulmonary trunk with the aorta. So what happens is that some of the blood that would normally go to the lungs instead goes straight through to the aorta and gets delivered out of the body. And so all these guys, their main job is to just not send blood to the liver or to the lungs because it's not needed yet. So here's a picture kind of showing all those things as well. So here's the baby's umbilical cord. So there's one umbilical vein and two umbilical arteries. So blood with high oxygen is coming in through here. Now some of it will go into the liver, but for the most part there's no need. Because the liver is not going to detoxify the blood. It's already detoxified. So it's going to bypass the liver right here through the ductus venosus. And then it's going to mix with the inferior vena cava and get some kind of like half and half blood. Half good, half bad. And then it's going to go into the right atrium. Some of it will go into the right ventricle, but most of it is going to go straight through to the other side, which then does a little U-turn out the left atrium, then ventricle, and then out to the rest of the body. So we have some fairly decent oxygenated blood going through. Some blood will end up going to the right ventricle, then through the pulmonary artery. Some of it will go feed the cells of the lung so they can grow, but there's no gas exchange going on. So what happens is it goes through the ductus arteriosus. Oops, I forgot to underline that one too. And then that blood is going to go through and go feed the rest of the body. And then any older blood is then going to go through and out the body to the placenta to go get cleaned up. So as you can see, it's highly complicated. So what happens when the baby is born? All these things are going to shut down. So this, the shunt, right, the ductus venosus right here, that's going to close down, and that's going to become your falciform ligament, if you remember that from last chapter. Out in here, the foramen ovale is going to close and become the fossa ovalis. And then, where is it? There it is. The ductus arteriosus, this guy right there, he's going to close up and become the ligamentum arteriosum. So the little ligament that holds the two together. So kind of crazy. This picture is good because it shows you the levels of oxygen that are found in all the different parts of the heart and the body. So at the end of the fetal stage, we got a little baby that's about 30 millimeters long, about 2 grams. He starts out at this, and then at the end of the virion, when baby's born, about 36 centimeters and 3 to 4 kilograms. All right, so just 2 questions. 1, what are the 3 modifications for fetal circulation and what do they do? And 2, when does the heart begin to beat? That's it, nice and small. All right, thanks guys. Bye-bye.